Welcome back, everyone, to our last session for the evening in our pre-Tikkun Leil Shavuot program. I'd like to welcome Andy. I believe that Andy has traveled to, well, this is his third stop. I'm not sure if it's a physical stop or a virtual stop, but this is the third time that he's speaking this evening. So we really appreciate that.
Thank you.
What we say, best for last, right? Right,
Yeah.
Andy?
Yeah.
So just a couple of announcements. One is that this is being recorded. And the second one is that everybody should please remain muted except for Andy while he makes his presentation. And then if there's time towards the end, then I'm sure we could have some questions. So I just want to once again thank Andy, and it's nice to see you again. We're used to seeing you every Shabbat, and we really miss that. So at least we can have a little bit of a taste for this evening.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. Okay, so the topic is going to be spontaneity or structure. If we look in the Torah, what kind of inspiration does it give that the leadership of Israel, should they follow the laws very carefully, or can they improvise? Can they act spontaneously out of their own volition and do things? So that's the topic I'm going to explore. I would like to start by saying that this presentation is in memory of my parents and my grandparents on both sides of the family. And also recently we had a friend of mine, his father passed away, and his name is Dr. Musa Kermani. He passed away last week, and he was a very close friend of the whole family. So it's in memory of him too. So my parents, my grandparents on both sides, and Dr. Musa Kermani, in that their souls should go from strength to strength on, and the lecture is dedicated to them. So the topic again is, can the leader of Israel be spontaneous, or does he have to follow protocol all the time and be very cognizant of the laws and just applies the laws? The main ideas that I'm presenting is from Rabbi Sachs, Jonathan Sachs. So let me give you first a practical example. It's an example that I just saw. It wasn't part of my presentation, but I think it's relevant. There was a story about the Lubavitch Rebbe, the seventh Rebbe of Chabad, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson. It was before he became the leader of Chabad. Now we're in 1943. It's about 7 years before he took over the leadership of Chabad. And at the time, he was a Chassid, a follower of his father-in-law. And they were in this building, 770 in New York. And, 770, by the way, I don't know if you know, but it was an abortion clinic. And it was purchased by Chabad and became like a synagogue and everything. All the activities there, the headquarters for Lubavitch. Anyway, so there, some Jews came and they were just looking at them. It was clear that they were non-observant Jews. And Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson was there, and as they entered the building, he greeted them very warmly, and he profusely welcomed them, and he spent time with them, and he enjoyed good time with them. And when they left, the people of Chabad, they came to him and they said, "Is it proper what you're doing? These Jews, obviously, they don't follow the mitzvot. You can see it by the way they behave. And you're being so warm, so welcoming, it's as if you're giving a kosher seal on their behavior." you as a religious person should rebuke them a bit. You can't just be so nice to them, because by being so nice to them, you're saying everything you do is okay. It's fine the way you behave. And Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, he thought about it and he said, you know, you have a point. It was my spontaneous thing that when I see Jews, I just love them. I go, I embrace them, but I didn't think about what you said, and maybe you have a point. So he went to consult his Rebbe at the time. So in 1943, he went to consult his father-in-law and asked him, what do you think? Did I do the right thing or did I do the wrong thing? Because it was spontaneous. He did something spontaneous. And now he wants to know, is it according to the law or is it not according to the law? Does it fit the structure of what Judaism expects us to do, or does it not fit what Judaism is saying we should do? And his father-in-law reasoned with him. He said, look, every Jew is a child of God. And when you have a child, you have infinite love for that child. And if on top of it, the child is not following all the dictates, it's as if the child is handicapped. So not only you have the infinite love that you normally have, but you have a unique love for that child because they're handicapped. They have a shortcoming that is essential. And therefore, the love is even bigger. And he said, what you did was exactly the right thing, because you are imitating God. And so the question was settled, and you can see Chabad Lubavitch, they just embrace everybody. And that was something that was done spontaneously by the future Rebbe. It was criticized, it was brought for a decision, and structurally it was accepted that this is the best thing to do. So this is just to give you an example of how a leader or a future leader is reacting spontaneously, and then he's worried, does that fit the structure of Judaism, yes or no? Now, who are the leaders of Israel? If you want to go biblically, who are the top people? So you have in Hebrew Melech, that's the king. You have the Navi, that's the prophet. And you have the high priest, the Kohen Gadol. These are the top leaders of Israel. And you have also a body of judges. It's called the Great Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin is composed of 69 top judges. They are in Jerusalem by the temple. And there is actually 71. So there is 69 regular judges. And there is one is called the Av Bet Din, which means the father of the Bet Din. He's in the second in command of the Sanhedrin. And then you have on the highest level of the Sanhedrin, the one who's in charge of the entire operation. His name in Hebrew is Nasi. Nasi means a prince. In modern Hebrew, Nasi means president. We call the president of Israel Nasi. But in biblical Hebrew, Nasi means a prince. And if you look at King David, he was one of the few kings who had the title of Nasi. How can you be a king and you're a prince? You're either a prince or you're a king. In this case, prince means leader of the Sanhedrin. So not only King David was the king of Israel, but he was the leader of this judicial court called the Sanhedrin, and he was the Nasi. And the reason why a king can sometimes be a Nasi is because really the king, he's supposed to embody the spirit behind the law. So meaning the judges, they apply the law. But when you want to learn the spirit behind the law, it's the king who has this idea. So I described to you biblically who are the top people. Again, the question is asked, can these people be spontaneous or do they have to follow exact laws? They cannot just spur of the moment react. And so let's go to the episode of Nadav and Avihu. Nadav and Avihu in Parsha Shemini, as an example, God was revealing in the sanctuary himself, and they spontaneously got up, they took a firing pan, they put some incense, and they started doing some kind of service that they were not asked to do. Most rabbis, they describe this as an ecstatic spiritual, they were like spontaneously brought to do some ecstatic action. They were so happy that the presence of God appeared that they did this. And for that, they died. The whole ceremony was marred by the death of Nadav and Avihu because they acted spontaneously. So we see clearly an example here where acting spontaneously is not okay. You can't just take the firing pan and go there and do whatever you want. You could die. So that's an example where the answer is no. You cannot be spontaneous. Another example of spontaneity is Moshe Rabbeinu is coming down the mountain. He's seeing the golden calf. He's seeing the people dancing around the golden calf. Spontaneously, he takes the tablets in his hand. He has it. He breaks them. That was spontaneous. How is that okay, what he did? Is this acceptable? Well, if you go to, because really, he destroyed the holiest thing that was on earth ever. Made by the hand of God, written by the hand of God. So if we go to the end of the Bible, it says that never in Israel was there a prophet like Moshe Rabbeinu that did all the signs and wonders in Egypt that we saw, and all the strong hand that he put against Pharaoh, and he was able to display the awesome power and the strong hand of God, and he performed all this before the eyes of all Israel. These are the last words of the Torah, before the eyes of all Israel. And Rashi comments on that portion and says, you know what is before the eyes of all Israel? Is when he broke the tablets. He broke the tablets of the law before the eyes of all Israel. And what God is doing here is saying, Yashar Koach, may you be strengthened. Thank you for breaking the tablets. So we don't understand. Nadav and Avihu do something spontaneous, they are dead. Moshe Rabbeinu does something spontaneous, not only he's not dead, they thank him. I mean, he died eventually, but that action was not the cause of his death. And not only it's not the cause of his death, God is thanking him for breaking the tablets. So here, and this is the analysis by Rabbi Sachs, he's saying, what is the big difference between Moshe Rabbeinu and Nadav and Avihu? The big difference is Nadav and Avihu, they were priests. Moshe Rabbeinu, his main function is he's a prophet. For a priest, it's not okay to be spontaneous. When you're a priest, when you're a Kohen, you're serving in the temple, you have to follow the rules by the book. You don't deviate an inch, a millimeter from the rules. You're there to serve God, and God has very precise requirements of what he wants and what he likes. And you deviate even the minutest amount from that standard, and it's catastrophe. But Moshe, it's in his job description to be spontaneous. When you're a prophet, your entire being is to respond to the mood of the people. It's to be there for the moment. It's to be there and respond to how they are feeling right now. And right now they're making a golden calf. And right now they're dancing around the golden calf. And right now the contract that you have in your hands can only be a liability for them. Because by this contract, it's It's like a ketubah. The 10 Commandments is like in a marriage, you have Israel and God, and the 10 Commandments are like the ketubah. And by tearing up the ketubah, you're saying, well, the woman can do what she wants. She's not married. She's not connected to you yet. And therefore, the gesture of breaking the tablets was annulling any obligations that the Jews have to God. And he did it spontaneously because he was angry and he felt that these are a liability, what he has in his hand. And God agrees with him. He says, you did the right thing. It was the right thing to do. It was the call of the moment. So let's link it to another idea in the Talmud. There is a controversy in the Talmud. It's regarding prayer. It says there is two opinions. There is someone by the name of Rabbi Jose ben Hanina. He says the prayers were instituted by the patriarchs. And there is another rabbi. His name is Rabbi Joshua ben Levi. And he says the prayer were instituted to replace the daily sacrifices in the temple. So it seems like an argument that has no importance. What is the big deal? So the prayers come from the patriarchs, or the prayers are coming to replace the service in the temple? They're prayers, they're there. What does it make difference? What is the source? Well, in light of what we just discussed, there is a huge difference. If the prayers are coming to replace what's happening in the temple, then when we pray, we're acting like priests. And if we're acting like priests, then we have no permission to deviate from what is written in the prayer. We have to say exactly the prayer word by word, the way it's written in the Siddur. If you deviate an inch, it's like you're a priest and you're not following the path. It's very reprehensible. But if they come from the patriarchs, who are the patriarchs? Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Maybe you can consider Yosef and Yehuda in a sense, but those three, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So you're saying Abraham is the equivalent of the Shachrit, morning prayer. Yitzchak is the equivalent of the Mincha, afternoon prayer. And Jacob is the equivalent of the night prayer, Arvit. So if you're saying that they come from, who are the patriarchs? They are prophets. So if they're not coming from priests, if those prayers are coming from prophets, it means that when you pray, it's okay to be spontaneous. You have to be yourself. You have to express yourself from the heart. So really what these two rabbis are discussing in the Talmud, they're saying, I'm saying this is going to be from the patriarchs. No, it's a priestly thing. It's in the temple. It means that one is saying the prayer has to be structured. The other one saying, no, the prayer has to be from the heart. It has to be spontaneous. How did Judaism resolve this? Well, look at the prayers. When you get to the Amidah, the morning and afternoon prayer, you have the silent Amidah, which each one does in his own heart. And then you have the open Amidah, which everybody repeats the Amidah in a public way. The second one is the structured one. The first one is the spontaneous one in the heart. In the first one, you're acting like a prophet. In the second one, you're acting like a priest. You're doing, now for the night prayer, it's only silent. The Amidah, you don't repeat it, which means on the night, you're only acting as a prophet. You're not a priest anymore. And sure enough, if you look at the temple, there was only sacrifices in the morning and only sacrifices in the afternoon. There was no sacrifices at night. So if you're saying that the prayers are priestly, it means all that counts is the morning prayer, the afternoon prayer. The night prayer is not as important. Plus, you have to go by the book. You have to read exactly what the rabbis wrote, and you don't deviate from the prayer. If you're saying that you can be spontaneous, then it's your heart. You say what you want to God. So what we see is Judaism, it made it very beautiful. It did both. It did the spontaneous part, which is the silent prayer, and then it did the public prayer, which is the structured part. And we see that at night, there is no more requirement for structure. That could be explained by the fact that once you have structure in the morning and the afternoon, in the night, just be yourself, because you already interiorized the structure from the morning and the afternoon. Now you don't need to be so much guided by force, by structure. Now you can be yourself because you already internalized what needed to be internalized earlier in the day. So what we learn is that structure is necessary to ensure continuity from generation to generation. Spontaneity is necessary to give fresh life to what you're experiencing right now. So you need both. And so we took the example of the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. We took the example of the prophet. We related the prophet with spontaneity. We related the priest with the structure. What is the king? The king is a mixture of the two. He's at the same time like a Kohen Gadol and at the same time like a prophet. It's like having when you have your right brain and your left brain. Your right brain would be like the prophet. It's the center of creativity, music. Your left brain is like the priest. It's the center of logic, mathematics, structure. The king is the amalgamation of both. It's the integration of both. Has both the right brain and the left brain. Now the question is, why were the priests boxed into this situation that they had to only follow structure? And I think it's probably because of the episode of Shimon and Levi. When Dinah was raped, they were outraged and they went and they killed the whole inhabitants of Shechem. And as a result, they endangered all of Israel. And that was a spontaneous thing they did to take revenge for their sister. And so now, in order to compensate for that, they have to be boxed. You cannot do what you want when you want, because you're endangering other people. So just like in the temple, they are disciplined. This is how you behave. You have no room to do whatever you want. It's like correcting previous lives. It's like correcting the mistakes that was done in past lives. And sometimes the opposite is needed. Sometimes people were too rigid in their past life. They were always structured. They always, at the cost of structured, they caused devastation. By being too orthodox, they made people run away from them. And now you're being asked to be a prophet. Stop being so much of a stickler on rules. Let go of the rules. Now, be spontaneous, be intuitive, express yourself, your uniqueness. And this is what we do as Jews at night, the nighttime prayer. Once we have the structure of the morning and the afternoon, we're free to be ourselves at night and really talk from the heart with God.